This is Ian R. Crane on the afternoon of Thursday, 5th of September 2013. Exactly 1 week after the historic parliamentary vote in which the sitting MPs failed to come to the support of the sitting Prime Minister in his call for military action. The first time in some 230 years that a Prime Minister had not been supported by Parliament. What we're seeing going on right now is perhaps a change in the New World Order. Those socio-psychopathic global corporatists who would do generally whatever it takes to ensure that they have control of the planetary resources have come up against some unexpected opposition. That opposition being the people, the electorate, those who the parliamentarians have been supposed to represent all along. Meanwhile, the right-wing press continues to attempt to stir up the war fervour amongst the British people, a fervour that isn't there. The mainstream right-wing media is marginalising itself at a phenomenal rate of knots. Some interesting characters in the warmongering posse, not least Cuddly Boris, Mayor of London, who suggests that we should step up to the plate and unleash a cruise missile hell on Assad and the civilian population of Syria. Another warmongering politician is Malcolm Rifkin, former Defence Secretary. Now, Malcolm Rifkin has a very interesting pedigree. He is co-chair of the Global Panel for America with former US Undersecretary of Defense Dov Zakheim. Dov Zakheim was the comptroller working for Donald Rumsfeld in the days leading up to 9/11. And in fact, on September the 10th of 2001, the day before the events of 9/11, Dov Zakheim announced that the Pentagon could not account for $2.3 trillion. That's a lot of funding for black ops. Malcolm Rifkin is also co-chair of the Trident Commission, established in 2011, to examine and report on the UK's nuclear weapon capability. So clearly we have socio-psychopaths right at the heart of the warmongering political elite. In the US, the warmongering continues to be led by John Kerry, a former presidential candidate, of course, when we had Bonesman versus Bonesman, of Kerry versus Bush. And John Kerry, like Charles Linton, John Kerry, of course, just a few years ago had dinner with Assad and their respective wives, and just as Charles Linton cozied up to Gaddafi and then promptly knifed him in the back, it seems that Kerry is now doing the same with Assad. So perhaps one of the initiation rites of those who think they should be part of the inner sanctum is to knife your former friends in the back. John McCain, another former presidential candidate whose foreign policy was famously summed up by quoting the Beach Boys song of Bomb, 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 Bomb Iran. He was caught playing online poker during the debate in the Senate. Zbigniew Brzezinski has recently stated in an interview with the German press that the efficiency of war is being impacted by the global political awakening. In other words, the fact that the people are waking up, the fact that the people are starting to take an interest in global affairs, the fact that people are starting to realise that they are being manipulated by a socio-psychopathic global elite is actually having the effect of slowing them down in their hegemonic agenda. It is symptomatic of the fact that idle no more should be the motto of that rapid political awakening. Vladimir Putin of Russia has actually stepped up to the diplomatic plate and stated that John Kerry is lying. Well, thank you very much, Vladimir, for saying what we all know. You know, it is no longer possible for politicians to trot out the lies and the deceit and expect the gullible masses to take it at face value. If elected representatives wish to remain in political office, then they are going to have to start taking note of the popular view. The significance of last Thursday's parliamentary vote cannot be underestimated. The 30 Conservative rebel MPs, along with the 30-odd that, for whatever reason, failed to turn up, of course demonstrated to David Cameron that they would not kowtow to his every whim. Subsequently, David Cameron wrote to the Conservative MPs, and I have a copy of that letter, and I'd like to read it to you. It comes from the Prime Minister's office in 10 Downing Street. Dear colleagues, I'm writing to you about the events of the past week. The scenes we saw in Damascus last week, the slaughter of men, women and children, as a result of the use of chemical weapons by Assad's regime, were shocking. It remains my strong belief that we need to take a robust approach to an appalling war crime, and to uphold the international taboo on the use of chemical weapons that has existed for almost 100 years. So when President Obama made a request to me for Britain to help deter the future use of chemical weapons, I wanted to support our strongest and most important ally. But I am also a Democrat. I believe in listening to Parliament. I was determined to learn from the mistakes made in the past over Iraq, and I wanted to consult the House of Commons properly and proceed in as consensual a way as possible. That's why we put a resolution before the United Nations, called for the United Nations weapons inspectors to present their evidence to the Security Council, and promised a second vote in Parliament before any action was taken. But as I said in the House of Commons yesterday, in the end the British people and the British Parliament had to make a judgment. There is a great scepticism about any involvement in the Middle East, as people worry about our country getting sucked into the Syrian conflict. They do not want British involvement in military action. I get that and I respect that. We will continue to make the case at the United Nations to uphold the prohibition on the use of chemical weapons. We will continue to work with all the organisations we are members of, whether NATO, the EU, the G8 or the G20, to address what happened in Syria. At home, we will remain focused on turning Britain around and securing an economic recovery for everyone who wants to work hard and get on in life. That means continuing to cut the deficit, continuing to help create jobs and continuing to fix the welfare system so that it rewards work. I know there were sincerely and powerfully held views on all sides. I regret that I could not build a consensus, but the House of Commons spoke and the government will listen. Well, David, you couldn't build a consensus because the country knew that you were lying when you claimed that Assad had used chemical weapons. We also need to understand that if Assad is removed from office, it will of course lead to the murder of the Christian population of Syria and many other Muslim minority groups. This is a fact that William Hague was made aware of over 2 years ago. Yet this does not seem to matter one iota to a warmongering elite intent on taking control of global resources. Interestingly, I also have a copy of the financial statement from the IMF regarding the Syrian Arab Republic. Syria is completely free of debt, just like every other country in the axis of evil. People all around the world are waking up to the lies and the deceit. This is the global political awakening that Zbigniew Brzezinski has been talking about for a number of years. As Brzezinski himself has stated, it is easier to kill 1 million people than it is to control them. If that doesn't wake us up, God knows what will.
I understand the frustration involved in being awake to the evil reality that surrounds us, only too well. frustration from knowing the truth.